There's 100 times more anti-Semites on the planet than there are Jews. It's really that bad. People who've never met a Jew in their lives, all they know is mythology about Jews. But, you know, the bottom line is this is a war on values.
Anti-Semitism is being cloaked in the disguise of anti-Israel, Israeli genocide. These crazy backwards terms that are complete and utter lies. And by the way, it is stunning how little our children know about what happened to the Jewish people, even in the Holocaust during World War II, and the failure of many universities and school systems to teach the truth, down to just even what happened in Israel on October 7th. Where people were slaughtered. It's just unbelievable to me. I know you must be like me thinking, what is going on here? How can this happen in this modern day and age? You know, has the American public turned against Israel? Are we leaving our Jewish friends behind? We've seen these huge protests in the streets. And then I couldn't believe what I was seeing. And I'm actually going to probably play this for my next guest when he comes on. But it was Vice President Kamala Harris actually talking about Islamophobia in the United States. I mean, what timing? What timing? What is going on here? Colleges and universities publishing letters that are standing for Hamas? Where did this all come from? What does this mean? I'm joined today by Rabbi Yaakov Menken. We've had him on the show before. He's a phenomenal rabbi, a great thinker, and can actually analyze what is happening here and kind of pull this apart for all of us. I want to play an ad for you here. It's from the Coalition for Jewish Values. They put this ad together. I have to say, for those of you watching this on YouTube, for those of you listening, this is a graphic video. There are some areas that are maybe you may be highly sensitive to, anybody would be, but it's the facts. This is the facts. This is about what the Jewish people, and by the way, the Western world is up against when it comes to dealing with terrorism. Just viewer warning, this is graphic. Take a listen.
When BLM was founded, they didn't hide their anti-Semitism.
If we don't step up boldly and courageously to end the imperialist project that's called Israel, we're doomed.
Despite this, professional sports teams ignored their bigotry and elevated BLM, providing millions of dollars in publicity, including teams in cities with vibrant Jewish communities: Chicago, Dallas, New York, Miami, Boston. Now their grassroots organization and Chicago chapter praised the massacre of Jews in Israel, the murder and burning of Jewish children, the rape of Jewish women, and the slaughter of 1,300 Jews in Israel. They have called for the end of the only Jewish country in the world. Will the NBA, MLB, and NFL stop supporting and promoting a movement that advocates the murder of Jews?
Powerful, powerful stuff. And we all need to be thinking about that. How are you being played? Do you really know the real history? Have you had any time to process what has been happening in the world right now? And believe me, this is not just about Israel. This is about the Jewish people and wiping them off the face of the earth. This is what groups like Hamas advocate. They are doing this at the behest of Iran. This is what Hezbollah advocates. This is what other terror organizations advocate for. And guess what comes next, folks? The Western world. These are cults, extremists, Islamists that believe in one thing and one thing only, and that is finding a way to get to the afterlife as quickly as possible. That is what they believe. They believe that our way of life makes us infidels, that we are nothing but lower than a dog. And it is the reason why these extremist groups, and I'm saying extremists, can so easily do things that we could not even think of. We wouldn't even do what they did to an animal, you and I. You and I couldn't even do that to an animal, I guarantee it. Now, there might be some sick people out there, but I think the majority of people could not do that. Rabbi Menken is the managing director of the group, Coalition for Jewish Values, the one that put together that very powerful ad against Black Lives Matter, because that group is nothing more than a hate group. And they are complete and utter hypocrites who pocketed millions and millions of dollars and enriched themselves and their leadership. And they're just a grotesque organization. And I want you to think about what you just heard, what you just saw, and what I am telling you. Because when I get Rabbi Menken on the show shortly, he is going to blow your mind. You are going to learn, and you are going to be educated, and you are going to be able to stand up to the bigotry and the real hate that exists out there and anti-Semitism. I can't wait to talk to the rabbi today. But first, I need to thank Beam Dream. I know, I love that name. Beam Dream makes me like I'm floating on the moon or something. You know, when we've been raving about Beam's Dream Powder, their healthy hot cocoa for sleep. And today my listeners get a special discount on Beam's Dream Powder, their best selling healthy hot cocoa for sleep with no added sugar, now available in delicious flavors like sea salt caramel, cinnamon cocoa, and chocolate peanut butter. Better sleep has never tasted better. A recent clinical study revealed Dream helped 93% of users wake up feeling more refreshed. And listen to this, 93% reported Dream helped them get a more restful night's sleep. Just mix Beam Dream into hot water or milk, stir or froth, and enjoy right before bedtime. If you want to try Beam's best-selling Dream Powder, take advantage of their biggest sale of the year and get up to 50% off for a limited time when you go to shopbeam.com/Sara Carter. That's SARACARTER, and use code CYBER at checkout. That's code CYBER at checkout. That's shop, BEAM.com/SARACARTER, and use code CYBER for up to 50% off. You won't regret it. I'm so happy to have Rabbi Yaakov Menken again. I know I promised him, and I told you, Rabbi, I was going to have you on all the time, and it hasn't transpired to that. I need to get you on more, like every week or something, but I have you on the show now. You're the founding and current managing director of the Coalition for Jewish Values. You're the editor at Cross Currents, and you're the architect of Torah.org. We just watched at the top of the show your new ad for Coalition for Jewish Values, and it is probably one of the best ads out there that I've seen. You actually target the sports, teams that backed Black Lives Matter, this very racist and hypocritical group that is anti-Semitic as well. So, I just want to thank you for that, and then we're going to get right into it. But first, thank you for being on the show, sir.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for showing that ad. I think it's very important that it get out there, that the sports teams realize that there's now going to be substantial pushback, because Black Lives Matter never actually served the Black community. And I've spoken with numerous Black leaders who pointed out things like, which I didn't know, but 80% of members of the Black community opposed defunding the police. But of course, Black Lives Matter had their narrative and they ran with it. And, for the obvious reason, the number of young Black men being killed on the streets exceeds numbers from before Black Lives Matter by a factor of 2 or 3. It's horrific what they, quote unquote, accomplish while enriching themselves and supporting anti-Semitism. And of course, they just cheered for the horrific massacre, the pogrom that took place in Israel on October 7th. So this is what they're all about.
Yeah, it's really disturbing. I was stunned when the BLM chapter out of Chicago was the first to post the Hamas terrorist symbol flying, on his parachute.
The paraglider, that's right.
Yeah, paraglider. These are demonic actions by the worst of humanity. What happened in Israel is unspeakable, yet it happened. And you have groups like BLM who hijacked basically this narrative that they are somehow fighting for Black lives, that they are, that they are a symbol of the Black American community, and they are not. And you're absolutely right. I have spent time in Oakland and in San Francisco and in many places in Chicago where community members, especially in minorities that are in underprivileged communities, are saying, that's not who we are. We want police in our communities. We worry about our children walking to school and the fact that gang members, which are the minority here, are in control of our streets. And they do not speak for us. How do you think this happened, Rabbi? How did it happen that these extremist groups in the United States were able to gain such a foothold? And how terrifying is it when you see what happened in Israel, and then you see in the United States thousands of people marching in the street against Israel after the Israeli and Jewish people were attacked by terrorists? I can't get over this.
Well, this is, it's Goebbels and the Big Lie. It's like Kristallnacht all over again. I was told by a professor, this is going back 10 years, but he said, what was going on campus, he already saw it happening. It was kind of obvious if you were actually looking for the signs and symbols. Do you remember when it used to be that on college campuses, people actually went out and protested for human rights causes? Things like Rwanda and Bosnia. These things are gone now. Darfur. Everything is about Palestine, Palestine, and Palestine. And he said to me, he says, I think the reason why this did not happen when Israel's so-called occupation was new in the 1970s is because in the 1970s, you had professors walking the campus who remembered very well what the rhetoric was in the 1930s and said, oh, what you are saying here sounds exactly like what they said about Jews back then. You're just applying it to Israel. Well, today people acted like it was a human rights cause. I think that mask has now been ripped off. It is so obvious now to any thinking person that the whole Palestine narrative was nothing more than an excuse to revive Jew hatred after the Holocaust. Jew hatred has been around for a long time. Treating it as an aberration was stupidity from the get-go. The Holocaust was just an extreme manifestation thereof after centuries, literally, of expulsions and auto-da-fe and the massacres, the blood libels, the poisoning the well. All of this nonsense was just being revived by the Nazis. Now it's being revived by the so-called Palestinians, which is a ridiculous narrative. It's theft of a colonialist name that was used to describe Jews for 2,000 years. And now they claim it's the Arabs who are Palestinians. The whole thing is stupidity.
It really is, but it's so terrifying. It's almost like, and I said this at the top of the show, like the memory hole in 1984, right? Where these professors, these progressive radicals, are not teaching the basic fundamentals anymore, like professors used to teach, where you have discourse, where you debate, but where you talk about the realities and the facts of life, like what happened in history so that we don't repeat it again. Now, I want to go back to this nationwide study, and I was looking it up earlier today, and it was in 2020. There was a nationwide survey that was released that shows a worrying lack of basic Holocaust knowledge among adults under 40, including over 1 in 10 respondents who did not even recall ever hearing the word Holocaust before, ever hearing it. It's like, so it's so unbelievable to me that that's even a reality. But then if they're being taught like a lie and a propaganda lie, and they're being taught that the Jews and Israel, this is a state, a genocidal state that's suppressing this mythical Palestinian land, and the Palestinian people, well, then you can see if they're not being appropriately taught in the universities, and if parents are not teaching their children about the horrors of humanity as well, we're only bound to repeat those same horrors in the future by those same evil people or the same type of evil people.
You know, I'll actually push back on one thing, which is that Holocaust education by itself is actually useless. People walk out of the Holocaust education and see what was done to the Jews and then claim the Jews are doing that to the Palestinians, which is, of course, like, it's not of planet Earth. The Arabs in the so-called Palestinian territories are the ones who are now getting the best education in the Middle East. They have longer lifespans. A Jew living in Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, now has a longer lifespan than a Jordanian. Until this latest fiasco happened, a resident of Gaza had a longer lifespan than an Egyptian. That's the opposite of genocide. That is really what Israel's impact is. Better health care, better higher education, the right to vote. I mean, and this is what they call a brutal occupation, and they call it Nazi treatment. It's this insanity. What you need to look for, and rabbinic literature has known this for centuries, and of course, left-wing Jews don't even know this themselves. If you're looking at and you see somebody accusing the Jews, quote unquote, of stealing something that's not theirs and feeling like they're superior to everybody else, you're listening to an anti-Semite. The Jews take advantage of everybody else, which starts with them stealing. That's exactly what the Nazis said. That's exactly why the Nazis started with a boycott. That's exactly where BDS comes from. That's exactly where this language of occupation comes from. Oh, my goodness. The overwhelming majority, the Jews in Israel, the majority of them were ethnically cleansed out of Arab lands. And yet it is they being accused of apartheid, of feeling racist and superior to everybody else. That's 3,000 years of anti-Semitism right there.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm glad you pushed back on that a little bit. I think it has to be a whole entire revamping of our education system and how we approach the truth. And you're absolutely right. When I was in Israel several months ago, I mean, we were talking about what was happening in Gaza, in the West Bank. The amount of money that is poured into Gaza is absolutely incredible. But what is surprising to me is that the Hamas and Hamas leadership, Hezbollah leadership, Iran, the leaders of these groups take the majority of that money for themselves, have mansions and live in laps of luxury outside of the region. And they love the idea of pushing this victimization, not because they want even more money, but because they want to obliterate the Jewish people. That is how much they hate the Jewish people. Human super beats. Folks, we all have a heartfelt reason to support our blood pressure. In fact, more than half of the U.S. population would benefit from blood pressure support. I know I do. I know I need everything I can to help lower my blood pressure in my such a demanding job. I mean, I feel like many of you, I work 9 to 5, but paired with a healthy lifestyle, the antioxidants, and guess what? Super Beets are clinically shown to be nearly 2 times more effective at promoting normal blood pressure than a healthy lifestyle alone. And that means being able to carry my Super Beets with me when I'm on trips, being able to get up early, say, hey, you know what? I forgot to take my Super Beets. Guess what? They're in my purse. I can pull them out, pop them in my mouth when I'm on a plane, and they taste great. Great little snack if you don't have anything else on you, by the way. That's happened before. And they make you feel good. And they not only lower your blood pressure, but guess what? Supporting healthy blood pressure, it actually comes with a bonus. Super Beets Heart Chews helps support your healthy circulation as well. So you not only get good blood pressure support, you also get productive, heart healthy energy without the crash. And let me reemphasize that, without the crash. Double your potential with Super Beets Heart Chews. Get a free 30-day supply of Super Beets Heart Chews and 15% off your first order by going to getsuperbeets.com and using promo code Sara. That's SARA, promo code Sara. That's getsuperbeets.com, code Sara. And I wanted to ask you this question. It's about the United Nations and, all of the UN money that goes into the schooling systems and, and what happens in Gaza and in those territories. And this UN Watch group found that the teachers that are teaching these children inside these enclaves in Gaza, in the West Bank, are teaching them to hate Jews, are teaching them to murder Jews. That is part of the core curriculum. I mean, I never saw that when I was in Israel. I don't have any Jewish friends I'm talking about in Jewish schools where they are taught to hate and want to kill an Arab or a Muslim or anyone. I don't see that anywhere. So this is my problem. How is it turned on the Jewish people when the reality is so blatant and in our face that these Islamists and these extremist groups are not only anti-Semitic, they're anti-Western. They call for the destruction of the West. And yet we'll find Westerners all over, even gay LGBTQ, FMXYZ groups supporting them in the streets.
It's, this is the insanity of that whole intersectionality narrative and all the falsehoods. I mean, they invented this idea that a Palestinian is somehow different than the Egyptians, the Lebanese, the Syrians, who live all around them. They invented that so that they could claim that Israel's the one committing genocide rather than Hamas. Right. As if the Israelis, because if you identify the Arab nation as what it is, which Mahmoud Abbas on his better days, he says it openly to the Jordanians, we're one people, living in two states. He acknowledged there is no difference between a Jordanian, because Jordania was 77% of Palestine. Hello? This whole idea that they need a Palestinian state in the middle of Israel, the whole idea that there's refugees who have to be settled by Israel, this is the Arab states using these people as pawns, ruining their lives. They don't give a damn about their own people. In fact, regarding your point about the school systems, and right now, the IDF caught phone calls. They intercepted phone calls where the Hamas fighters are taking fuel from the reserves of the Shifa hospital. They're taking away Shifa hospital's fuel so that they can use it for missiles instead of to save lives. And then, of course, Shifa will go to the UN pleading for fuel. The Israelis aren't letting us have fuel. Well, of course, the Israelis aren't letting you have fuel because that fuel is going to be used to fire more missiles. I mean, it's just the whole thing is a bizarre narrative inverting. Well, you don't have any other situation in the world, where you have a first world army facing off against a genocidal terror organization, and Westerners are taking the side of the genocidal terrorists. But that's also because this completely ridiculous narrative, white people bad, dark people good. Arabs are therefore considered a persecuted people. Really? Look at the entire northern Africa. The Arabs did not build the pyramids of Egypt. They did not build the ziggurats of Iraq. How is it that all those places are controlled by Arabs today? It's called jihad. When it comes to bigotry, the Arabs are most often found by far on the giving side. And if they're being persecuted, it's either by other Arabs. It's the Sunni versus the Shiites. So, don't give us this whole false narrative. And by the way, you want to get how extreme it is. Jews who were ethnically cleansed out of Syria. Syria is a great example of how things go great for Arabs after they cleanse out all their Jews. Iraq's another good story like that. They do absolutely fabulously once they cleanse out the Jews, right? So the Syrian refugee Jews come to America. They do okay by themselves. All, neighborhoods in Deal, New Jersey and in Brooklyn. And okay, so now they're called having white privilege. Meanwhile, the Syrian refugees of today, who are the descendants of the barbarians who ethnically cleansed out the Jews, those are dark people and therefore they're persecuted. That is an inversion, and it is a racist inversion. It is open bigotry against white people, and there's nothing more scummy than a person less than 100 years after the Holocaust claiming Jews after the Holocaust, after being slaughtered for not being white, claiming Jews have white privilege.
Oh, absolutely. I can't agree with you more. And there was something that I had brought up before on this podcast, and it was Thomas Sowell. And it was an old video of an interview of him, you know, great thinker, American thinker, Black American professor. And they asked him, like, what, I can't remember exactly how the question went. And I wish I had the clip right now, but it was basically like, what can the Jewish people do to like stop this hate of what's happening to them? And this questioner went on, and then Thomas Sowell, with one word, said it: fail. He said it is just an enormous jealousy. It's like this hatred of a people, of this small, he's like a small group of people on all of planet Earth. Literally, like right now, there's 15 million. And there's such a hate for their ability to succeed. That's the only thing he could think of was fail. So go ahead and fail, Rabbi. You want people to love you, you have to get rid of all the books behind you. You can't be.
I was thinking actually of Independence Day, where the alien is asked by the president of the United States, what could we do to have peace? And the alien says to him, die.
Yeah. There you go.
That's we just have to get rid of you all. The idea, you're right. I mean, there's 100 times more anti-Semites on the planet than there are Jews. It's really that bad. People who've never met a Jew in their lives, all they know is mythology about Jews. But, the bottom line is this is a war on values. They have they hate Jews because Jews were given values first. Mount Sinai, God gives it to the Jews. The Jews are promoting values and morality. Barbarians hate Jews. They hate Jews for they will go after Christians. As soon as they get the Jews out, look around the world at the places where Christians are experiencing the worst persecution. And what you'll find is that these are places where they've already gotten rid of all their Jews. That's how it works.
Absolutely. Look at Pakistan. What happens in Pakistan to the Christians? Look around the world. Look at Iraq. What has happened to the Christians? But not only that, just look at the edicts by groups like Al-Qaeda, and Islamic State and others who they have it in their writing. They want to see the obliteration of the Western world. You either join us or you're dead. You're an infidel. You're a nothing. We don't care about you. We don't care about your women. I mean, let's be honest and forthright about this, because I feel like our enemies are very straightforward with us. It's Americans who are overthinking, and they think like, well, if we reach out our hand and we find a common ground, then maybe they won't be so angry with us. Nope, they really want to kill you. The Islamists really want you dead. That's what they say, and they mean it. I want to play this clip because it blew my mind. I mean, it was so crazy. I couldn't even believe it. I thought the Babylon Bee had done it, but it's actually Vice President Kamala Harris making a statement yesterday. No, not against anti-Semitism, but against Islamophobia.
Every person has the right to live safe from violence, hate, and bigotry. And for those reasons and so many more, President Joe Biden and I have a duty, not only to keep the people of our nation safe, but to condemn unequivocally and forcefully all forms of hate. Since we took office, President Biden and I have fought to uphold that duty. Over the past decade, America has seen a rise in attacks on houses of worship. So in response, we expanded funding to protect houses of worship from violence. After a surge in hate during the pandemic, in particular anti-Asian hate, President Biden signed the COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act to improve the reporting of hate crimes and to ensure hate crimes are investigated quickly and thoroughly. Earlier this year, in response to an historic rise in anti-Semitic attacks, we also released the first national strategy to counter anti-Semitism. And to make clear, taking on hate is a national priority. President Biden and I held the first White House summit to address hate-fueled violence, and we brought together religious leaders, community leaders, and survivors to continue our work to keep all Americans safe. And today, we take another important step forward in our fight against hate. For years, Muslims in America and those perceived to be Muslim have endured a disproportionate number of hate-fueled attacks. As a result of the Hamas terrorist attack in Israel and the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, we have seen an uptick in anti-Palestinian, anti-Arab, anti-Semitic, and Islamophobic incidents across America, including the brutal attack of a Palestinian-American woman who was Muslim and the killing of her 6-year-old son. A senseless act of violence that the Department of Justice is investigating as a hate crime. For so many people in our nation, the past few days and weeks have brought about all too familiar fears. Fears that they will be targeted, profiled, or attacked simply because of who they are, how they worship, or how they look. And so today, I am proud to announce the Biden-Harris administration will develop our nation's first national strategy to counter Islamophobia. This strategy will be a comprehensive and detailed plan to protect Muslims and those perceived to be Muslim from hate, bigotry, and violence.
How do you respond to the vice president on this? Because I just felt it didn't do any good. It was a statement that, to me, went right over what happened, didn't even address the issue of the horrors of what happened in Israel, and went straight over it. Included it, but went straight over it.
It was all virtue signaling, totally disconnected from reality, in a really embarrassing and really insulting way. This was degrading to the Jewish community faced with a wave of anti-Semitism to try to claim that in context, there's something called Islamophobia, which is the equal of anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is a unique form of hate against Jews just for being Jews. Barbarians hate Jews for having values first. There's nothing similar to that in the realm of Islamophobia. If you look around the country, there's definitely something called xenophobia. But xenophobes don't like Sikhs. They don't like Hindus. They don't like Buddhists, and they don't like Muslims. They don't like anybody, in short, who's not like them. We get that. Obviously, that is true. But this idea that Muslims are picked on uniquely, there's only one thing. If you take that thing out of the picture, all of a sudden, hatred against Sikhs and Hindus and Buddhists is no different. And that is radical Islamic terrorism. The biggest Muslim organization, the name-carrying organization for Muslims in the United States right now, is the Council on American Islamic Relations, which has close ties to both the Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas. That's about radical Islamic terrorism. If you don't like that organization, it's because you are a good human being, not because you are phobic of Muslims. I know good Muslims. I appreciate working together with good Muslims. But when you have a claim that there is a religious text, a hadith, which is used by Hamas, which claims that the redemption will not come until the rocks and trees call out, "O believer, there is a Jew hiding behind me, come and kill him." Having a fear of that is not a phobia. Fear of dismemberment is not a phobia. Fear of decapitation is not a phobia. So she's using this concocted term, with all respect to my dear Muslim friends who know this to be true, that they get the backlash that poor 6-year-old child, who certainly did not deserve to be slaughtered, but it was a backlash following a horrific act of Islamic-motivated radical Islamic terror. And actually, Muslims in the United States are the most likely to support that sort of radical barbarism. Get Hamas destroyed. Let the Israelis do their job. Back Israel, because if you really care about Palestinians, you really care about Arabs, you really care about Muslims, you want to see Gaza rid of Hamas entirely exterminated, so that ordinary people can live their lives and work on their business and grow their families and grow their education. That's the reality we're looking for. And this idea that, no, we have a group in America that's backing the terrorists and we're not supposed to be afraid of them, that's not a phobia, Madam Vice President. It's reality.
That is reality. You're absolutely right. And people are on edge because I think we know that we are easily going to be the next targets of whatever Iran and Hamas or Hezbollah or any of these other proxies have in place, whatever plans that they've been working on for the last 2 years, they're probably already here in the United States. And I want to get to this before I let you go. And I want to bring you back on next week. I'll let my producer know that right now, live before everyone, because I think we need to follow up on this. But we're recording this. This is Friday, November 3rd. And Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah has just given a speech praising the October 7th Hamas attack and claimed that the raid was, quote unquote, proof that Israel is weaker than a spider's web, and that 1 month into war, it allegedly has not been able to make any achievement. He has also threatened the West. I believe in my heart that this is the beginning of what is going to be a continuous reign of attacks by proxy groups on the Western world as well as the Jewish people. What is going through your mind when you hear that kind of propaganda, that bloviating?
You know, the weakness of Israel is it is a civilized first world country. For all that the left says, it is, of course, very well known that if Israel wanted to make Gaza into a parking lot, it could accomplish that in about an hour. And it has not done so. So this whole nonsense about Israel being genocidal and wanting to kill out the Palestinians, etc., is obviously a false narrative. Now, here he comes on and claims that the Israelis have accomplished nothing. Meanwhile, the Gazans are screaming to the UN about how Israel is destroying everything. So, it's like you can't have it both ways, except that anti-Semitism always works that way. Hatred always works that way. Jews are hated for being communists and for being capitalists. They're hated for being rich and they're hated for being poor. Whatever it is you want to believe today is what you believe today. So the IDF is very weak and they're not accomplishing anything. Meanwhile, they're destroying Gaza and turning it into a parking lot and committing genocide. Really, it's like it doesn't matter. Reality is a small detail here. And the problem
really is,
and one of the big problems we have in the West is that the woke left cares about reality about as much as Nasrallah. That is a problem. You know,
that's a huge problem.
The vice president, she made a big deal about her strategy to combat anti-Semitism. Forget about Coalition for Jewish Values. They did not talk to Zionist Organization of America. They did not talk about combating anti-Semitism movement. They did not talk to the Simon Wiesenthal Center. They only talk to groups that either never call out anti-Semites by name or are very happy to do so as long as they're on the right wing.
Right.
You did not have people in the White House talking about anti-Semitism found on the left. The people who voted yesterday to not condemn Hamas, who were overwhelmingly members of the squad, Tlaib, Omar, AOC, Presley, Bush, we all know Bowman, we know who these people are. You have Nazis goose-stepping through the halls of Congress, and the people in the White House were not the people who were willing to call them out. Because if you want to take on hate, you've got to do it seriously. You've got to do it in a nonpartisan fashion. You got to not virtue signal. That's the biggest failure coming out of the White House right now in fighting hate.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. That is such an important point, and you're absolutely right on that. I can't wait to bring you back on next week, Rabbi. I really, truly appreciate the fact that you are a warrior against hate, that you speak for truth, and that you stand on the side of good. And that is why I like to surround myself by people that I believe are worthy of giving so much more to us, than taking. And when I see what happened in Israel, my heart just breaks. And like I said before we both came on the show, and we both were talking about this, but when I hear someone that is showing anti-Semitism in their thoughts or their ideology, or showing that kind of hate towards Israel or towards their own nation, the United States, I immediately remove them from my life. I'm like, I don't need this in my world. I don't want this in my world. I want to be on the side of good. And I know I'm on the right side of history. And that's what makes me go to bed at night. That's what gives me peace in my heart. And that, in my opinion, is my connection to God and people like you that are doing God's work. Thank you so much.
Well, you heard it from a rabbi. Sara Carter is good people.
I want to thank Rabbi Menken for coming on the Sara Carter Show today. It's always a pleasure having you on, Rabbi. Your insight is important, and especially in this day and age when we've seen the rise of anti-Semitism and the lies, a big memory hole. I feel like people are throwing away our history and lying about what is happening in the present. It's terrifying. I'm glad we have truth tellers that are willing to stand up to this evil and get the truth out there to the public. We deserve that, and the people of Israel deserve that. Please make sure you're subscribed to the Sara Carter Show here on your favorite podcast app. It really helps us. Follow me on Truth at Sara Carter Official, on X at Sara Carter DC, and on Instagram at SCarterDC. God bless you. God bless Israel. God bless our nation, and God bless the great state of Texas. Hello Fresh. You get farm fresh, pre-portioned ingredients. And guess what? Today is Friday and I'm getting mine today. And seasonal recipes delivered right to your doorstep. Skip trips to the grocery store and count on HelloFresh to make home cooking easy, fun, and affordable. That's why it's America's #1 meal kit, folks. #1. You'll taste all the freshness of fall in every bite of HelloFresh chef-crafted recipes. Produced travels from the farm to your door for peak ripeness and for taste. It's amazing. And by the way, they've got great desserts too. I love them. Apple cider cake with caramel sauce, or crowd pleasers like, listen to this, barbecue pulled pork nachos. They are amazing. And don't forget the mini pumpkin pie cheesecake, perfect for a me time treat. Folks, you cannot beat HelloFresh for its convenience and for its ability to put farm fresh foods right before you with the recipes, and you're not making the same stuff every night. So your family will not get bored and your kids can help, which makes it a family fun night, right? Every night, right? They should be helping out with cooking and they learn a lot from it. Go to HelloFresh.com/50 Sara Carter. That's HelloFresh.com/50 SARACARTER and use code 50 Sara Carter for 50% off plus free shipping. Again, save 50% off plus free shipping at HelloFresh.com/50 Sara Carter and use code 50 Sara Carter. HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit.